Patsis. I'm an ER nurse at Lake Forest. Volunteer fireman for Lake Bluff. Got a bunch of kids, ages down 25 down to 15. So I've been through a lot of experience with those kids. This is Erik. He's fireman over at Millwood, Chief, and he's a firefighter for Lake Forest. He and I work together quite a bit with our jobs. Teen drinking is a problem. It was interesting, the questions we got at the very end from the kids. They were more concerned about what trouble they were going to get in versus the actual drinking. You know, we try and talk to them about how they're influenced with their peers. We're finding, studies are showing that kids think everybody's drinking, so it's okay. And sadly, they see us drinking. And that's, sometimes our behavior is completely opposite of what we tell kids. You know, don't go drink and drive. When we go out to dinner, we have a couple glasses of wine. What do? We get in the car with our kids. So we're already sending them a bad message. So they're going to be influenced by their peers. And there's a lot of drinking going on that I hear of starting in 8th grade from my daughter, who's now a freshman at the high school. All the kids are doing this. Mom, they're all going to go do this. You know, what do you think about that? So they're talking to more themselves than they are to us. And what we try and tell them growing up sort of levels off for a bit with them. They also think that if their friends are drinking, then they think more of their friends are drinking, then again, that behavior is acceptable. And an average 6th grader, from the studies that we've shown, or read, I think about 50% of their friends have had alcohol. And actually, it's about 20%. That's still a shocking number to me. 20% of our 6th graders have tried alcohol. 1/5 of our 8th graders, and these are national statistics, have been drunk. Little guys. We look at these kids. When they come in the ER and you see this little kid just green and puking and can't understand how he got this way, and realize that they're 13 years old. They didn't have the reasoning at that point to say no, and they certainly are not going to feel better when they sober up. Keep them there for a while. So these kids are overestimating, and they're getting permission because they think everybody else is doing it. So we're finding that these kids are more likely to engage in drinking because they think everybody else is doing it, and they want to belong. We're also finding that when kids drink, it's kind of like when in the very, very old days, you know, you could have a couple glasses of wine. Women smoked when they were pregnant. Now we know, not such a good thing. One small drink can cause fetal alcohol syndrome. Studies are showing that kids that drink early are really damaging the synapses in their brain. 10%, they're going to remember less, 10% less than they would. If you look at the next one, we can show actually a CT scan. Now, I like things that are visual. You can tell me I'm losing some of my brain, but here's actual evidence. The one on the left, non-drinker. The one on the right, not so perfused, doesn't have so much blood flow up there. Definitely damaging their brain. And that sticks. And that's one of the other, well, does it come back? That's one of the questions we had at the end. Am I going to be better when I stop drinking? No. No. That's permanent. They also show that binge drinking is a big thing with the kids. You know, they are scouring. I learned from my older kids, I can't have any alcohol in the house because whatever I had was replaced with something else, usually water. So everything I had in the house had to go away, and we didn't even lock it up because there were ways to get in things that I didn't even know about. So all the alcohol went down. All the drinking and having a glass of wine in front of my kids at night had to stop because they saw this behavior and they were going into my liquor cabinet. But these kids binge drink, so they get the bottle, right? They're all happy. Now they're going to go make mixed drinks, and they drink it quickly because they think they'll get into less trouble. Well, what does that do? They ingest it. The alcohol rises really quick, and then they get alcohol poisoning, or they get really, really sick. And a number of kids from this community have thrown up on me. So this binge drinking behavior is epidemic to this age range. It makes them feel good. They don't realize how sick they're going to get. They don't realize that when they start drinking or when they get unconscious, and if they don't call 911 and Erik doesn't get there to help them, they don't realize that they could die. And the kids scatter. We know that. No one's going to want to get in trouble. We see a lot of car crashes. We see drownings, falls, burns. People, once they get beer goggles, the incidents start rolling, especially when there's parties and multiple kids involved. People have guns in their homes. You know, they're avid hunters. Kids do stupid things. Now they're going to sneak, or they already got the alcohol. Now they're going to sneak and show some of the firearms that are in our house. We have had shootings. But alcohol poison, I think, is the worst that we see with the kids chronically just drinking way too much, way too quick, and then getting themselves way too sick. An instance, one of my friend's kids, one of my son's friends, at the house, I was at work, left the house, snowbank. Snowbanks and alcohol in winter don't mix. Just happened to find this kid early enough. I'm one of the moms that no matter what you do, if you call me, I'll come pick you up. No questions asked until later. And they called me and said, this kid's in the snowbank. 911's called, kid's brought in. Hypothermic, throwing up. The parent was more mad that we had brought him to the ER. Right. Very sick and close to not going to make it. That was their point, that who's going to know about this and will it hurt them on their college? And we laugh, but that's not unusual. That's what we hear a lot of. Is anyone else going to know about this? Is this going to be in the blotter? Nobody wants to be in the blotter, but my concern is I'd rather have you live, and we'll worry about that stuff later. Thanks. So it's impaired judgment also. That's what we're finding. The kids just aren't reasoning. They're good kids. This kid that was in the snowbanks is a good kid. She just really made a stupid decision. What I try and tell some of the kids in the ER, if your parent's not next to you, pretend they were. If what you're going to do, they're going to not want you to do, let that uncomfortable feeling pass, because it is uncomfortable. Everybody's drinking. Everybody's doing this behavior, and they want to join in because, you know, they want to belong. Let that uncomfortable feeling pass, and then remove yourself. And if they can get past that bad feeling, then they've made pretty good strides.
As Lori was talking about, again, the big thing is alcohol poisoning is what it affects that we get to see, or unfortunately that I can see on the ambulance. Fortunately, it is not that large a number for the young population, the very adolescent young population like Forrest. We do have situations that we do respond to. Here's where kids are intoxicated to the point where their breathing becomes disrupted or not at all, and their gag reflex, and that's what we explained to the kids earlier. That's the biggest thing. Their bodies aren't large enough as our bodies are as adults to process the alcohol. And because they're drinking so quickly, because they want to get the saying of the get in and get out. You know, the parents are around, I'll drink real quick, and then they'll come home and try and pretend nothing happened is the issue, because they're drinking all that alcohol in such a short period of time. They're overloading their body, and they're creating a situation where they don't have the gag reflex, the ability to actually forcibly expel products or liquids or stuff like that through throwing up becomes decreased, and a situation where they aspirate, or basically that fluid or that alcohol comes back down in their lungs, can create a situation, obviously it's not good for breathing, but also long-term infection, so on and so forth. So that's, I think, what they need to understand more so, and that's what the parents need to instill in them, is that those are the big dangers for them. They saw these examples. Obviously, none of these examples are anything that are anything good for you, or anything that's appealing, if you will, as the result of drinking too much alcohol. These were numbers that Lori established. They got through just according to Kids Health. If you know someone who's been drinking, try and get them help, or try to observe that as quickly as possible. And again, that's typically, you're rarely going to see kids or adolescents that are just going to go and have one or two beers, such as we do, or as adults we go out, as Lori gave the example, go out to dinner, have a glass of wine, and go home. They are actually going to go out and binge drink, and that's the warning signs that need to be addressed quickly. These were the examples of the results that we gave to them. Myself, I've been a firefighter paramedic for 18 years. I worked in the city of Lake Forest. This will be my 9th year working in Lake Forest. I worked 4 years in North Chicago before this, so I got to see a lot of examples of stuff with kids. I delivered children from children in the field and saw a lot of instances of teenage drinking. I have been told many times I am running burning buildings to save people. That's not to get autographs when this session is over, though I will. But more so, it's a respect level. People tell me that they respect my position, what I do, and I respect all of you for making time out of your day to be here today to educate yourself on the dangers of teenage drinking, and also the situation where you're trying to educate yourself on what to do. I think today I'm not a parent, but I think as a parent, the difficult challenge you guys have is how do you educate your children on something that you can't actually physically give them? I need that time.
Hello? How do you do that? That to me is a tremendous challenge on you. And again, it's not something you can't sit them down at the kitchen table and line up a shot of vodka and a beer and a glass of wine and say drink it all and see what the effects are in front of them, as you can with a math lesson or a science lesson. So that's a difficult challenge for a parent today and any day. I will tell you that some way, and the best way that you figure out is basically talking. Obviously, as parents, you all have to have the discussion with your kids about sex. That's, I think, even an easier conversation today in this day and age than it is to have a conversation about drinking alcohol, because, you know, you turn on the television set, it's filled with sex and everything else. So kids are already learning that at a younger age anyway. But to sit down and discuss the effects of alcohol, they can hear people like me or Lori or Judge Stride step up here and talk about this stuff, but to actually see what the results are. And I'll give you the example of where we get to see it here. As a senior fireman in Lake Forest, I pick my vacation in August, September. The junior guys, they want the 4th of July and they want Christmas. That's great. Well, that's because they don't know the organization in Lake Forest that takes place every year, which is a disaster for us. August and September is the start of Lake Forest College. And guess what happens? All these kids that maybe didn't have a discussion, maybe they were drinking before they came to Lake Forest College, but majority of the people that we have to deal with in the ambulance are their parents said no, they didn't want to talk about it, they didn't educate their kids, and guess what? Day one, they want to accomplish the adolescent years of drinking in one night at one toga party at lovely Lake Forest College. And guess what we get to do? While I'm sitting at home laughing because I took vacation, the junior guys are up because they're running 5, 6, 10 ambulance calls at Lake Forest College, taking all these students. And when I first started there, we literally will take busloads of ambulances of kids to the hospital. We have had ambulance situations where we've had mutual aid ambulances from other towns transporting 10, 12 kids in one night after one party, because these kids come there, they, again, want to accomplish all the experiences of drinking in one night. They're away from their parents. There's nobody there to guide them, if you will. Fortunately, the police department in this town is very aware of the situation. They make sure their officers patrol the campus on a regular basis just to find these kids, because oftentimes they drink, they want to go home because they're embarrassed, they may be throwing up or getting sick at the party, if they're fortunate to do that. Then what happens is they go back to the dorm room. The security and the campus staff are vigilant to make sure that they're checking on kids on a regular basis. And they find them in the showers and passed out in the courtyards and wherever. And then, of course, we have to take them to Lori at the hospital. So those are the things that you guys will encounter now. Your children are 7th and 8th graders here at the junior high. They're going to go to the high school, which they're going to be introduced to a little bit more freedom, if you will. And it's not saying lock your kids up in a closet and don't let them go out, because that's not realistic. But just be mindful that these conversations, just as important as the conversation is about driving or sex or whatever else, it's also important to have the conversation about the drinking part. And then when they go on into college, especially. So again, my hat's off to all of you in here that are taking the time. In theory, this room should be filled with people, because I guarantee you, nobody wants to have that conversation. Everybody will have the sex conversation. Nobody wants to have the drug and alcohol conversation or feel it's easy. And I don't think there's as much information about that than there is here. So I give you guys the best of luck and respect all of you for being here.
And one other thing, that if somehow, unfortunately, your child does end up with us at the ER or sick, we understand how horrifying it is. Most of us there are all parents. If I could just ask that you take the instance seriously and talk with them. They are all concerned about what trouble they're going to get in, and they should, because what unfortunately we do see is once they start drinking, we have kids that we see chronically. As a 6th grader, I've seen a kid as a 13-year-old. I actually still see this child. And it's not just one, there's many. So if you can stop it at the beginning, and it's uncomfortable to be in front of other parents with a child that's done something that's not right and you're not proud of. But it's better to stop it at that point so that they don't continue to be lifelong drinkers.